Hi, folks. Wanted to welcome you to the August edition of the Agile Austin Agile at Scale meetup. We have a great topic lined up for you today that we'll get to in a moment. But first, I want to talk about Agile Austin for some of those folks who are attending one of our meetups for the first time. We love to connect people and foster professional growth through collaborative events and education as well. And it's worth noting that we are a 501c6 nonprofit organization. Um, our 2023-2024, I need to correct on the slide, board members, but I do have Lee added here, mostly unchanged from last year. But yes, Lee, who will be speaking us today, is now our Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. So welcome to the fold. And Scott, Max, myself, Angela, we're all happy to have him on board. And we are just enjoying serving the community. We wanted to thank our sponsors, Retrospectives, our platinum sponsor, and then silver sponsors, Ad Meliora Coaching, WellSky, and 321 Gang. Without their support, the SIG and many of our other meetups would not be possible. It is critical that we have more sponsors join us over the next few years. We have ambitious goals and also a conference coming up next year that we would love to get sponsors for as well. So you can reach out to contact@agileaustin.org if you or your organization are interested in sponsoring us and helping us continue this journey. We also are sustained by fees associated with our membership. So we have various perks, including access to our Slack. You can vote and sit on the board, and special events and training discounts, including the just announced mentorship program. So you can sign up and find out more at agilaaustin.org. So we also have other SIGs, our Agile Coaching SIG, this one, Agile at Scale. We have a book club, which doesn't necessarily operate as a SIG, but it has a number of folks that join and love to discuss some of the great books of our day. And definitely join us for those. You can go to the meetup site to see more about that. Leaders, Lean Kanban, and Scrum Master SIG as well happen most months too. Just about this one specifically, we love to talk about scaling topics, and we've got, of course, got a great one for you today. My co-facilitator is Leland Newsom, and he's been doing this since 2016. I joined him in 2020, and it's been a great journey so far. Our upcoming events in September, optimize flow of your development value stream by applying advanced value stream mapping techniques, Peter Vollmer. We don't actually have a topic for October, so if you're interested, feel free to reach out to myself or Leland. I got contact information on our last slide. And then also in November, we have the hot topic of the day, artificial intelligence for agilists. Are you ready? With Scott Ambler. But for today, Lee Allison is going to be talking to us about why does Scrum fail at scale? And so really looking forward to this. I'm not going to spend too much more time on my slide deck. Just real quick, either leland.newsom@agileaustin.org or ben.rogers@agileaustin.org will reach us, and would love to hear about anything related to Agile at Scale, or anything else related to Agile Austin. Definitely would love to help you out. So with that, I am going to stop sharing and I will hand things over to Lee.
All right, Ben, thank you very much for the intro. I do appreciate it. I've probably worked with most of you guys at some point or somewhere along the line on some project here at AA, or maybe even in the workplace. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lee Allison. This past spring marked my 10-year anniversary for holding a certified Scrum Master certification. I've been doing Agile for a full decade now, and that is on top of a previous decade worth of project management, traditional project management experience, which is on top of yet another decade in the corporate world. So this ain't exactly my first rodeo. In fact, it's not even my 200th rodeo. I'm probably a pretty senior circus clown at this point, or rodeo clown at this point. But today we're going to be talking about why does Scrum fail once you take it to scale? What is it about it that causes the problems? Now, we all at some point or another have been able to, let's see, make sure I'm sharing correctly. We've seen Scrum run into issues at scale, and we can certainly talk about what it looks like. But today we're going to dig into a little bit deeper, and we're going to talk about why. Now, this is not a concise list, but from my experience, from my seat in the circus at the rodeo, we're going to talk about two reasons that, in my opinion, are underlying, they're very bedrock kind of reasons that causes these problems. And then we're also going to look at what is it that the large scaling frameworks bring to the table that help to counteract this. Now, I do want to caveat one thing here. I am a SAFe program professional, but we are not here today to talk about SAFe. SAFe is not the only scaling framework out on the market. There's Agile at Scale, there's Less, there's Nexus, if that's still a thing. I haven't heard anything about Nexus in a while, but there's a handful of other frameworks. And the ones that are successful are all successful because they manage to solve some of the basic problems of scale. Now, before we get too started in why does Scrum fail at scale, let's talk for just a minute about, I'm going to give you a quick story that we're going to use as a framing device for portions of this discussion. In late 2000, I had the opportunity to sail aboard one of the very last cruises run by the Barefoot Cruise Lines out of Florida. Now, on the right-hand side, the small ship, this was what Barefoot ran. Not a one of the ships in their fleet totaled more than 50 souls on board, including the crew. This was a small, intimate, highly engaged experience for people who wanted to get a taste of the saltwater life without the big carnival kind of experience. Were you interested in having dinner with the captain on board that cruise? Absolutely, not a problem. Wait until the first mate fired up the barbecue pit on the fantail, go to the fantail, grab yourself a couple of shrimp skewers, go back into the main deck where the bar was, fix yourself a rum and something cocktail with an inordinate amount of rum in it, pour it into a fresh coconut, and then go find the captain. The captain was the shirtless, barefoot guy, completely covered in tattoos, who was always happy to sit down and talk with you about life at sea. And he was always sipping on a flask of something. He would never share it, and he never told us what it was. But there was one evening on the cruise where there was a very small grease fire in the barbecue pit out back on the fantail, and I saw the captain shield that flask from the flames. So whatever was in it, it was pretty potent. That was the whole nature of the small ship experience on the cruise. Now, if you contrast that with a carnival or a Royal Caribbean, or for those of us who might have been around a little bit, the Love Boat, you guys remember that TV series? Dinner with the Captain, while technically the same thing, was absolutely not the same thing. Dinner with the Captain on a large cruise ship goes something more along the lines of, good afternoon, sir and madam. My name is Lee. I am the ship steward, the captain, or the captain steward. The captain sends his compliments and would like to invite you to dinner with him Thursday night. Please be on the promenade deck by 4:45 in formal attire, where you will spend an hour and 10 minutes having drinks and canapes with the captain and the lead members of our crew. And at 5:50, we will retire to the promenade deck for formal seating and a 3-course meal. Now, those are the same thing, but they're really not the same thing. And the change comes down to the scale of the thing. That scale is the reason why Scrum breaks. At its core, Scrum talks about smaller teams, tight communication, focused goals, and the ability to deliver incrementally. And these are all things that we recognize readily that are problems with a larger organization. And those problems come down to, let's see, where did we go to? Unlock, there we go. I guess I'm just gonna have to unlock the whole thing. No wonder I can't Miro, that's why. The problems with scale comes down to two major things. And the ones here on the left-hand side are the communications channels. Conway's law is a law that states that an organization designs a system. That system will be produced, and the design structure is a copy of the communication structure. Conway's right up here, okay? Now, we all understand Conway's, we all know it. It talks about the communications channels. But I would like to extend the thought on that just a little bit, and not extensively. Conway's also talks about what a company or what an organization can and cannot effectively do, okay? If you've got a smaller organization, a network, the mom and pop portion, like down here, let me get my marker up here, that network is defined like that small cruise ship. You want to talk to the captain? You need to talk to the CEO? Not a problem. He may not be shirtless and barefoot drinking from a flask, but you know what? In a small mom and pop, the CEO might be in the break room getting his butt handed to him at the foosball table by a lead engineer, okay? It's entirely possible. I've seen that happen. The thing about communications in a mom and pop, in a network, those communications are pervasive. Almost anybody can and will go talk to and communicate with almost anybody else. You're missing a critical piece of information in order to get your job done. You have two challenges, and the first one's only the really big one. Who is it that holds this piece of information? Once you know that, in a smaller network-based organization, it's simply a matter of a call, an email, a text, walk up to their desk, whatever it is, and get the information that you need so that you can continue delivering your piece of the work. Now, if we contrast and compare that with a hierarchy, right here, the hierarchy now becomes super challenging. Conway's actually dictates that as you get larger, you have to now stratify. You have to make rigid how parts of your organization talk to each other. And it isn't. It is never a situation that a larger organization, you know, the board of directors is sitting around and they're like, oh, well, we just hired our 35th person. We now have to codify our communications channels. No, that's not it at all. Remember the size of an agile team, the two pizza rule, or 9 to 11 people per team. Why is that? What is the underlying functional piece that makes that our overall guidance? And that is this piece of math right here. This is the piece of math that allows you to calculate the total number of communications channels within an organization. N is the total number of people in the group. So it's N times N minus 1 divided by 2. This is an exponential number, and it grows really, really, really quickly. In a small mom and pop, the CEO, the board of directors, leadership, they don't have a ton of communications challenges. So their ability to get their vision, their values, their acceptable and unacceptable behaviors, their ability to influence all of that is extremely tightly coupled with their normal day-to-day lives. However, above a certain number, and it's different for every organization, but it usually starts deflecting somewhere around the 50 to 75 people in the organization number. Those old methods of communication within the organization start to break down. So defensively, in order to be able to effectively lead their organizations, as an organization grows, you will find the leaders will start to codify how the organization communicates. regular reporting structures, more frequent meetings, hierarchical communications channels. The CEO is going to tell all of his directors. Directors are going to tell their leads. Leads are going to tell their teams, right? All of this is standard, typical corporate stuff that we've all seen 1,000 times before. And all of these things make keeping everybody aligned to the same piece of work very challenging, because there are now additional layers of possible failure. There are additional layers of work that has to be done in order to keep alignment. And these are parts of the reason why Scrum fails. Just the communication starts to get all, well, for lack of a better phrase, horked up. Okay, it all gets chewed up and it becomes much more challenging. In a small mom and pop, the ability for the leadership team to influence things is maybe not trivial, but it's certainly very organic. And that does not happen once you get above a certain number of people within your organization. And at the extreme ends of scale, once you're into 4 digits worth of people, you absolutely cannot have that organic communication. Now, communication becomes its own distinct piece of work, and you have to work at it. You have to work very aggressively at it to make sure that whatever it is that the leadership team wants to achieve with their operational budget for Q3 2024, you now have to put time and effort into ensuring that that's the work that actually gets done. And Scrum, as a team level discipline, doesn't address that. It doesn't talk about any of those things. It doesn't talk about the change from network to hierarchy and what that change does to the communication within the organization. And that's the number one reason. That's it. That, in my opinion, that's the biggest thing that contributes to our challenge. But we can dig just a little bit deeper as well, because the thing, again, in my opinion, the thing that takes you from doing Agile, yes, I have a bunch of Scrum Masters. Yes, I have a product owner for every team. Yeah, I've got great backlogs. That's doing Agile, and that's easy. Anybody could do it, okay? Being Agile is a different animal altogether. And the thing that makes the difference is adherence and embracing of Scrum values and principles. Values are your set of beliefs, your qualities that you strive for. And almost everybody strives to be somebody who has integrity, who plays well with others, who gets things done, who is dependable and reliable. Those are all pretty universal for the majority of humans out there. Your principles are the rules that are derived from your values. It's difficult to divorce one from the other. They both go hand in hand, and together they become evidenced in a series of behaviors, okay? Well, how do values and principles shift when we go from a mom and pop into a larger organization? And they shift by going from leadership by example, group censure, which normally is a negative thing, but we're using it in a positive term, in a positive connotation here, and our ability to hold each other accountable. All of that is organic and easy and just naturally part of being a member of a team. You don't really have to work at it too hard if that's a well-functioning team. Not even high function, just a functional team, right? Well, transition that to what do you get at scale? You get HR and legal departments, who are the people who are the gatekeepers of what is and is not allowable in the corporate world. You get values posters printed up on the wall with usually a craggy mountain range with white Arial font above or below it talking about what your company values are, right? And your accountability becomes challenging Okay. If you're as part of a dev team, dev usually almost always is part of IT, and you hear about somebody over in the purchasing department misbehaving, your ability to directly hold that person accountable is challenging. It's minimal. Yes, you can certainly throw a fuss, but it's supposed to be handled by other people elsewhere, his or her chain of command, their department heads, their operations officer, whomever, right? Whereas in a mom and pop, you can just simply walk up to that person, smack them on the back of the head and go, hey, knock it off, behave. We don't play like that around here. In a corporate world, that's more challenging, right? Now, all of these values and principles come down to trust. All of this, including the communications over here on the left, all of this leads into team trust. And in all of my experiences of all of the teams that I've ever had to troubleshoot, trust dysfunctions are almost always at the root of everything that is going wrong. Had a small team several years back where I worked, and this team was rock solid in their delivery, high quality, on time. They were our go-to. If you needed this body of work, you went to this team every single time. And they started missing. They started failing to hit their marks. And when they did hit their mark, quality was abysmal at best. So leadership asked me to come in and try to figure out what was going on with the team. Let's get them back on track. What happened to our team? Where did they go? Who messed this up? And it took about 2 weeks worth of time for me to dig to the bottom of it. But they had a tech lead in the team who was really one of the major players on the team. And he was the one that everybody went to whenever they had a challenge in delivering their product. And he was having marital problems at home, big ones, really big ones, capital D marriage problems at home, right? And that lack of focus on his work was putting him in a position where he was failing to meet his deliveries, his personal commitments to the team. And that resulted in, that evidenced in, the team was no longer able to trust that he was going to be their heart and soul. Because of that, everything else just went south from there, right? And it just kept getting worse and worse until we were able to call that out, get everybody, honestly, at a local bar over a pitcher of margaritas, get everybody to sit down and talk this out and figure out what was going on. And then we were able to get things back online. As per the two salmon colored stickies here, at scale, trust becomes hard. It becomes much more challenging. And like good communications, for trust to be effective at scale, it requires much, much, much more work. It requires strong leadership. It requires leadership from a moral and ethical position that states very clearly and shows, I'm not going to behave like that. I'm not going to let you behave like that either. And these things are hard to do. They're challenging. They are easy to get wrong. And quite honestly, with the majority of people in corporate America being so heavily overloaded with their workloads, it's very difficult for most of us to stop and take the time and make sure that we are evidencing good morals, values-based leadership. So all of this stuff eats at the crux of a good, high-functioning Scrum team. High-functioning Scrum teams always are steeped in trust, massive amounts of trust, in and out and up and down, left and right. Everybody knows what it is that everybody else is supposed to be doing, and they rely on each other to be there so that they support each other, they stop outside interferences, and they effectively deliver a high-quality product. You cannot do that without trust, and trust in communications If they're not almost identical, they are certainly very, very closely related to each other. At scale, values and principles cannot be assumed, and you have to put much more work into them to ensure and enforce the consistency of both. Okay, so these are, in my opinions, two things, the biggest two things that really drive into why Scrum fails at scale. I'd like to take a few minutes here and let's open it up for a couple of different questions, comments, counterpoints. If you guys think that I'm absolutely inaccurate on some of this, let's talk. That's what we're here for. If you do have a questions, please raise your hand and we'll go in order, okay? Let's see, who stole the chat button here? There we go. All right, any commentary from anybody?
There was a chat message a little ways back, someone saying some of us would argue safe isn't agile at all.
You know what? That is an absolutely really good point, okay? Is safe agile or not? Well, let me dissect that question, because in my mind, it begs, or you can't ask that question unless you view agile as a binary toggle. You either are or you are not agile, one of the two. I don't see it that way. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I'm wrong, but I see agile as more of a spectrum. All the way over here on, I don't know, whichever side you prefer, you've got top-down waterfall-driven delivery. Big upfront design. Your plan is locked in place before the very first line of code is written or the first brick is laid or whatever. And all the way at the extreme other end of the spectrum, you have an individual Scrum team, one product owner, one backlog, totally self-contained, totally self-driven, and they have the ability to pivot as needed in order to embrace whatever they find as part of the journey to get to success, okay? That's a fairly reasonable point of view. So now the question becomes, whatever your framework is, Scrum, Less, Nexus, Scrum at scale, doesn't matter. Where along that spectrum does it lie? And where can you reasonably get your organization to? Once you get over a certain number of people, development staff and product staff and marketing, et cetera, and I don't know what this number is. You're going to have to figure that out for yourselves. Once you get over a certain number, I will maintain that pure agility becomes super challenging, maybe even impossible. Now that's probably going to cause a little bit of commentary, at least I think it might. But again, if this is open for debate, while I might be one of the more gray-haired rodeo clowns at the rodeo, I certainly don't know everything there is to know about this, and I'm open to the discussion. So, anybody want to take a run at it?
We do actually have some questions, so.
Okay. I think, Ben, if you don't mind reading those out, I seem to have lost chat around here. Oh, you know what? Is this it? I found it. Yay.
And
so, Lee, what I was going to say about Scaled Agile, though, is when you look at safe, I think people replace the S with structured, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can never forget the A in safe, right? If you forget the Agile, then you're right. You're not, right? You're just blindly following some framework and you don't modify it. If you're going to modify it and you're going to run through Agile principles that says, let's see what works, what doesn't work. Let's understand what the tools that they give you to start with, what they're trying to do, and see if that's working for you. If it's not, then you say, oh, well, let's not do that. But how are we going to cover the idea or the concept in some other way? Because there's a reason that they start with those tools. But I think people really want a they want to just be told what to do a lot of times. And
Yeah.
you need thinkers, and you need people that can, you know, choose to move away from a tool that was provided,
Mm-hmm.
or you must have this meeting and you must have this ceremony. You know what? Well, maybe we don't, right? Um, we don't have even stand-ups every day in some of my teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
We do what makes sense. And that's the agility. And when that stops making
Yeah.
sense, maybe you go to more times per week, right? Or whatever meeting or whatever system that you have, you know, Agile Scrum is a system, right?
Yes.
And you can be very militant about Scrum without being at scale. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really about what mindset you bring into it, and will you consider, those lessons that you can learn um, from the lessons learned that you do at the end, from retros and whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, Brian, really good input. One of the things that I like to say, most of us here have been involved in Scrum teams at one time or another. Totally rhetorical question. How many times have you heard somebody ask, Brian, to your point explicitly, do we have to run a daily stand-up every single day, right? Is almost one of the first questions that most teams new to Scrum are going to ask. Oh, it's a lot of meetings. Okay. So when I'm mentoring or leading Scrum Masters, the point of view that I like to put them into is, what's the purpose of the event? What's the purpose of the artifact? They are all, regardless of what flavor of Scrum or Agile you're running, everything there is designed to uphold either a value or a principle. Okay. So I always fall back on something that I was taught growing up, which is, be willing to flex on your practices, but stand on your principles. Okay. So if you take that into mind with the previous statement that all of these bits and pieces of Agile are designed to uphold a value or a principle, when somebody comes and asks me, hey, we don't think that this is working, or we think we know of a better way to do it, my response to them, and what I like to tell Scrum Masters and other people, the point of view I like for them to adopt is, okay, first and foremost, ask yourself, what specific values and principles was this thing that you're trying to change designed to uphold? Okay, once you have those in your head, your new thing, is it still going to uphold those same values and principles? And as long as the answer is yes, run the experiment. By all means, you might just be coming up with the next great framework that's going to blow all the others out of the water. God, yes, let's go. But if the answer is no, tread cautiously, okay? Maybe still run the experiment, but be cognizant of what a failed experiment would look like, so that you can guard against it, and so that you've got a contingency plan if the experiment does fail. Does that make sense, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. Agree. And I love your flex on your practices, stand on your principles. That's a great one.
Yeah, and I run that sucker out at so many Agile meetings, because there's a lot of people that really want to push back on these events. And if you just come in and say, no, the book says we're going to have this event, we're having this event, you will absolutely positively just shed buy-in. You will just you'll watch it evaporate. Okay. And at that point, you're on to being successful, go right through the floor. On the other hand, if you can be more approachable under the proper conditions, hey, you guys don't like our biweekly Scrum of Scrums where all of the Scrum Masters from every team meets together? Okay, let's talk about what that's designed to uphold, which values, which principles. All right, great. What do you have in your back pocket that's going to do better? Let's talk. The practices, to me, are completely transitory. The values and principles are absolutely non-negotiable, period. Unless you want to bring in a practice that upholds more principles, then I'm real good with that. But you don't get to walk back and no longer support certain principles just because they're inconvenient for you. If you're going to do that, then why not just go seat of the pants project management and it's all willy-nilly, wild, wild west stuff, right? So good commentary, Brian. I do appreciate it. Who else?
Yeah, in the chat, we can start with some of those. Question from Wen came up. I'd be interested to know how trust, feedback, team cohesion is handled in a situation where team members, especially one who is problematic, are part of a union. Potential HR legal pitfalls there. Was talking to a friend about this just last night.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. My lady is a member of a learning and development group at a company here in town. And she's recently led a project where they're tying in sitting through courses with a system that they have from a third party. Have any of you ever worked at a company that utilizes like a kudos system? Like if I need something from Ben's department and Ben him and his group just absolutely crush it, I can go into this system and I can award Ben a certain number of points that he can then go to their store and purchase like t-shirts or coolers or whatever. They're tying in, you sat through surveying 101 class, here's a couple of reward points in our kudos system. And one of their questions, Alex and I were sitting around over dinner and she was like, well, this is a concern. What about people who start abusing the system just to be able to get extra points? And I was like, well, my point of view, that's not a fault of the points system. That's a leadership problem. That's a problem of hiring the wrong people. And don't let that stop you from bringing forth something that's going to truly help your people, keeping them all up to date on training, okay? In a similar fashion, if you've got somebody who is the problem child on a team, you is in any size organization, but the bigger, the more this becomes true, you do have to keep HR and legal exposure in mind when you're dealing with these problems. While I was in the military, we were taught a principle of solve all your problems at the lowest level of the food chain that you can reasonably get the problem solved. And where you're dealing in corporate America with particularly sensitive subjects, I wouldn't adhere to that at all. I would absolutely go overboard on them depending upon the topic. If any of the race, color, creed, religion, sex, any of that stuff is coming into play, I wouldn't hesitate to reach for HR or somebody senior who can come in and help to hopefully stabilize the situation and get it under control. But now that I've got the CYA out of the way, we're still left with a dysfunctional or non-functioning team. And you as the coach, the Scrum Master, the Agilist, the rest of the group's probably looking at you for some leadership or around what are we going to do with this person? And now you might be in a situation where you have to have some challenging conversations. Obviously, I can't give you specific guidance, but I can tell you, do everything that you can to retain and retrain right until you no longer can do those. In my professional career, I have been involved in exiting people from organizations 4 times now. And in my book, it's always the very last resort. And I will even tell these people, hey, I need for you to not do this, or I need for you to start doing this, and I don't want to do that, but we've tried everything else we can to keep you in line with the team. At the end of the day, if you've got somebody who's genuinely being a bad actor on your team, be prepared to earn some salary, because those are never good conversations. If you would like to reach out offline for a more detailed conversation, you guys know how to get in touch with me. I can't guarantee that I'm going to solve the problem for you, but I can certainly be a shoulder to at least bounce ideas off. And I'm always happy to give advice or opinions wherever possible. So I know that wasn't entirely a satisfying answer, but you're asking about a really, really tough thing too at the same time. Hopefully that helps.
So we also had a question from Jerry on the topic of trust. I have an engineering manager on one of my teams that historically does not trust Agile and Scrum. Any suggestions on how to get this individual on board?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, embrace that cynicism. Okay, it can actually be used to the advantage of yourself, the organization, and the teams. When we are doing PI planning, one of the last events is a confidence vote on the plan that the team has come up. And it's a 5-5 vote. 5 means you're strongly aligned with the plan, all the way down to 1 means you're absolutely guaranteeing this plan is going to fail. And you're looking in a big room of about 100 people. You usually get mostly 5s with a large number of 4s. You'll occasionally get a 3s. And on a handful of occasions, I've seen 2s. I've never seen a 1, but occasionally 2s. And these are people who are highly skeptical of the plan that the group has generated, okay? My approach to those folks is to always, in a very, very kind fashion, I am not trying to single them out or make them a scapegoat or anything like that. But it will, in the middle of that voting event, hey, Ben, come over here. Here, grab the mic real quick. You just threw a confidence vote of 2 in front of all of your peer groups. Brother, what are you seeing that we're missing? Talk to us about it, because if you're seeing a risk, maybe we can collectively do something to defuse it. Okay, so now I'm giving that person ownership of being the canary in the coal mine. I love my canaries. I treasure them and I look after them because they were willing to stand up in front of their peer group and call some BS. That's right there. That's a valuable thing when it's done effectively. But now what I'm doing is I'm starting to engage them. Hey, put your eyes on this thing that we're doing. And if you see it going astray, here's my phone number. Here's my direct text line. You reach out to me immediately and let's get this turned around. Let's get it going in the right direction. Now, all that's going to do is give you a foundation for a conversation, okay? It's what you do with the conversation after that. Now you want to take that person and you want to start getting them engaged in seeing the fruits of all of this work. But make no mistake, you're going to have to start out with a heavy dose of, hey, Ben, I know you don't believe in this agile thing, which Ben is absolutely not true. Ben's totally bought in on it, but I'm just using Ben as an example right now. Hey, Ben, I know you're not bought in on this, but I'm here to tell you it does work. Can you trust me long enough to give me like 6 months, 9 months, and let's run this experiment? At the end of those months, if you're still convinced that it doesn't work, let's revisit this whole conversation, okay? You've bought yourself some time. You've bought them in on the solution, and you have elevated their cynicism. You judo maneuvered it from a negative, a drag, to, hey, you're the person I'm looking to make sure that we're still delivering effectively for what we're trying to achieve. Powerful mojo.
For sure. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah.
I don't think and if I missed a question, feel free to pipe up. I don't think there's any other questions right now in the chat.
Okay, then I've got one more slide panel here. Let's see if I can actually do this with effectively this time without having to do it about 10 different times. Hey, look, I did it on the first go. All right, let's talk about some solutions. And these solutions, all 12 of these items, are things that are either broadly or very, very specifically present in all of the major scaling frameworks that are out there, at least the ones that have survived the test of time, that are still around, and that have proven themselves in the field for being effective. And they are the antidote to the two problems that we talked about up above. Conway's mandating that as you get bigger, your communications channels are going to change and going to take more work. And then the values and principles becoming harder and harder to maintain the more people that are in the boat. Okay, so let's start with Conway's. What you're looking for is any sort of framework that embraces, either directly, verbatim, or conceptually, doesn't matter, but it's going to respect the hierarchy. The hierarchy is there within your large organization to protect the organization, and it is a valuable thing. Even when it's a pain in the butt, it's still a valuable thing. What you need is the ability to fork off a smaller team of team size of people and treat them like a network while still respecting the hierarchy. Yes, I get that these 50 people all report to 8 different directors, okay? God, that would be a nightmare, but I've seen it happen, okay? But for the purposes of this work that we're doing right now, we're going to treat all of these as one team working together, and we're going to save the director involvement for big dispute resolution or whatever it is that you need those folks to do, okay? You're looking for communications that are a mix of network fluid and hierarchical rigid. So regular Scrum of Scrums, regularly updated big visual information radiators, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No matter how much the framework would like for you to pretend like you're still a network, you're not. You're still a hierarchy. So your communications are still going to require extra effort to make sure that everybody has had their voice heard in the plan, is kept up to date on the progress in the plan, and is held accountable for their work contributing to the plan, right? Your team of teams are probably going to hit Dunbar's number. 1990s, Dunbar proposed that humans can comfortably hold about 150 social connections in their head. This is not a hard science. That is an incredibly soft number. Think of it more like a guiding principle than a law, okay? But Dunbar's number has proven to be pretty resilient in the world of management, right? Whatever you call it, point 4, your big room or your PI planning or your large scale planning, whatever the verbiage is, you need some sort of everybody into the water. We all get to build this plan together. There are no hierarchical walls stopping communication while we're doing the planning. You need some sort of focused planning event to that end. I have done these both with and without SAFE, and they are transformative for getting a large group of people aligned to one consistent plan. You also, once the plan is done and once you're into your increment, however big that is, you also need structured check-in events. And at the end of each increment, you need large-scale demos of working systems to the entire organization. That's how you keep this team of teams accountable to effective delivery of what they stated they were going to do at the beginning of the increment, however big that is or isn't. As far as your values and principles, those values have to be enforced. They have to be evidenced in day-to-day operation by your senior leadership, period, end of story. If you've got a senior leader somewhere within that team of teams who's saying one thing, but then turning around and doing the opposite, you have a huge problem. And that person is literally a risk to any level of agility or cohesion within your organization. And that's probably worth stopping pretty much whatever you're doing and focusing that to a solution to as much as your abilities will allow you. Your values and principles have to be customer focused, and you have to work extra hard to minimize the impact of politics. In large organizations, it is exceedingly easy to demonize other departments, other teams, other parts of the organization, and make them the bad guy in the story of why whatever this was failed. It's very, very easy to do that, and it is rarely true that person A or group A has another person or group that is actively working against their interests. I'm not saying it's never true. It's just not true nearly as often as some of us would like for it to be. Your work has to be visible, and your team of teams has to be held accountable, and hold regular retros and learn from those retros. This column, the values and principles column, reads very much like how to run an effective Scrum team, right? I mean, it really does. You're just doing it at scale. Okay, so let's do a quick recap, and then we're going to do a last round of Q&A. Let's see. Let me zoom back out on my Miro board. Come here. The two biggest challenges we have with Scrum at scale is your communications channels shift once you get over a certain number. You know what? That might be Dunbar's number. That thought just occurred to me. It could be. I'm not sure, but possibly. And how you address interdepartmental communications around your product become critical. You can no longer just organically signal a shift in change. Now it requires deliberate focus on communication. And your values and principles, the further removed you become across departments or across teams, the less likely you are to be able to just know that that team's going to behave based on effective values and principles. Now it starts to become very easy to demonize those people and see them as other, but they're not. Your organization lives or dies as an organization. No one team within that organization can be successful at the expense of other teams for very long, and certainly not expect the whole org to succeed either. So what are you going to do about it? You're going to find or come up with, hey, if any of you are cooking up your own framework that's going to knock everybody else out of the park, let me know. I want in on the ground floor. You're looking for any sort of framework that is going to codify and open up those communication floodgates, and then reinforce and embody those values and principles. Whatever framework of scale that you embrace, those are the things that you're looking for that will help that framework get Scrum to be able to survive at scale. Okay. Last round of questions or commentary.
From the chat, we have from Craig, does team of teams suggest a matrix organization?
Would it be better to say that without a matrix organization, you probably don't need a team of teams? Maybe, Craig? I'm not sure. It could. Team of teams, or once you've got your hierarchy and you're going to extract a small network team, that by definition now becomes a matrix organization. I have this group of people who are working on this team, but they're dotted line into that team. They're actually still reporting to their own individual bosses. I know that matrix organizations take a bad rap, but once you get over a certain number, good luck operating without them. You know, I don't think we as humans have come up with a better managerial technique other than that. But yeah, a team of teams might very well just insist in some sort of matrix capacity. I see Sherry has a comment that communications shift once you get over a certain Dunbar number. You know, I'm not going to disagree with that at all. I think that's probably very accurate, Sherry. Thank you.
So yeah, I guess we can open it up to the floor here. I don't see any other questions in the chat, or if you'd rather type it in the chat, I'm happy to read it out.
Yeah.
So
I was going to have a comment on the matrix organization.
Yeah, Brian,
So
what you got?
a lot of people aren't comfortable with matrix organizations because they aren't comfortable not having direct control, right? Direct responsibility. So, if somebody thinks they're responsible for an outcome, right? But they don't have direct control over everybody that is contributing to that outcome, they feel very uneasy
Yep.
because they want to have direct control over everybody that's responsible for that outcome. And obviously, once you get large, that can't happen.
And what's the other word we use for people who like to maintain control over everything that's happening?
Control
Micromanagers. Micromanagers. Believe it or not, micromanagers are just as hard to manage as they are to live under, because they don't trust that anybody can do anything half as good as they can, including their bosses. And again, we're back to trust. We're back to trust again. Got it, Sandra. Thank you very much.
yeah, we got time for a couple more questions if anyone wants to ask.
All right. If we do have just another second, there are two quick bullet points I'd like to throw in here. First, I'd like to call out my friend Ned Horvath for recently having won the community award. If you guys didn't see that, don't forget to congratulate him. Yay. The other thing, at the top of the talk, Ben was talking very much, same with you, Sherry. Ben was talking about the board of directors at the beginning. We found out recently that Scott Killen has announced that this is going to be his last tenure as our finance officer. He is now going to be retiring completely. So he has given us heads up, and he has generated an entire drive full of videos of day-to-day finance operations for Agile Austin. When this happens, do this. When that happens, do this. So Scott has done amazing work in attempting to make the onboarding of our next CFO as painless as possible. What I'm saying is we're going to be looking for a new chief financial officer shortly after the first year. If this is something that you think that you would be amenable to doing, if this is a way that you would like to give back to the organization, our CFO is one position that we just simply cannot do without. So we're going to have somebody to come in and take over for Scott. And I just want to put a bug in everybody's ear. Could that be you, or do you know somebody who might be interested? If so, let Ben or myself know. We'd love to talk. All right.
Yeah, thanks for those bullet points, Lee. Any plugs for yourself?
Not really. I'm in the job market, so if you guys need an agile coach that occasionally drinks and isn't afraid to tell people what's really what, let me know. Beyond that, apparently that's not what the market's looking for right now. No, it's with all the layoffs. This is a tough job market to be in. So other than that, not really. I appreciate you guys listening to my blatherings for the past hour and let me come and take up your time. Hopefully everybody's walked away with a little bit of something. If there's anything I can do to help you guys out, either job related or not, let me know. I'm always happy to sit down and just talk shop.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation, Lee. And for sure, folks, definitely reach out to him if you have any opportunities. Lee's a fantastic agile coach, and I know he can help your organization out. This recording, there's a question in the chat. Yes, this recording will be up on our YouTube channel by early next week, and we'll be posting back on the meetup page with a link to that. So again, we are ending just right on time. It looks like it should tick over to the 1 o'clock hour here shortly, Central Time. So thanks again, Lee. Thanks again to all the
Thank you guys.
Really appreciate your time. And you all have a fantastic rest of the day and a great weekend. And if you're in Austin, try to stay cool.
Absolutely. Cheers, everybody.
Take care.